Hello again, my lovelies. Welcome back to another Madman video featuring me, your favorite film critic. Or I guess depending on your perspective, your least favorite film critic. You know who you are if you don't like me. I don't have to point it out. So this video is gonna be my reaction / review / maybe some suggestions for improvement for the movie Prometheus from 2012. Now, the year this movie came out was one of the dozens, if not hundreds of years that schizophrenic people predicted the world would end. And normally I disagree with those predictions, but in the case of this, I don't know, it's kind of hard to argue against it. This movie's so bad. It's almost like the world of film ended when it came out. I had the unfortunate experience of seeing this movie in theaters. And the opening's pretty good. You got all these kind of Death Stranding visuals. That game wasn't out, but you know what I'm talking about. You got these cool shots panning over like a Scandinavian or Icelandic landscape or something. It's supposed to be early Earth. Again, the music's very good. The reason I'm doing this commentary in part is because this movie and Alien 3, they share a lot of similarities in my brain. A lot of the visual stuff was done really well. The costumes, the set pieces, everything like that was done okay. And even some of the performances aren't bad. But again, the same dirty little flaw keeps popping up, and it's bad writing. You can have all the production designers and directors of photography in the world, but if the writing is bad, it's still bad. And trying to conceal it, pick your metaphor. It's like you have a sandwich and all the ingredients are fresh, but the meat is rotten. And it doesn't matter how much rosemary or kale or habanero peppers you put on it, it's still going to give you food poisoning. Now we got these epic waterfalls, and then, oh, what's this? It's a UAP, as they call it. I wish I could UAP like I could when I was in my 80s. I gotta have a catheter put in to do that. Oh, and then we got this creepy, hooded monk figure coming up onto the alien ship. Oh, Jesus. That guy's so white, he makes white people look black. Can I say that? Am I gonna get canceled for saying that? Oh, Jesus. What is he, stripping for us? Is this a Joe Rogan episode? What you got, a pomegranate or something? Don't eat it. If you eat that, you'll be in Hades. Oh shit, he's gonna drink it. Oh, and the arrival ship is flying away. That's a much better movie than this, by the way, is Denis Villeneuve's Arrival. And the alien ships look a lot like that one. You'd be better off watching that movie than this crap. Okay, so now we're doing a visual exposition scene where we zoom in and we see the effect that this concoction has had on his DNA. It's kind of like what happens when I drink my nightly vodka gimlet. I can feel my DNA unraveling, and I'm one step closer to the peace of death. Oh, Jesus. This guy needed to call it quits, have some water, and go home. Spent too long at the bar. And then we got this crappy, cheesy callback to the first Alien. Contrast this with the opening credits of Alien 3. It's not a good thing when your movie makes Alien 3 look like a better, movie in terms of how it pays homage to the first film. Oh God, why am I watching this crap? I guess it'll hasten the time between now and my inevitable return to hell. So then we cut to this scene with a bunch of archaeologists, and they're opening up some kind of cave or tomb or something. This scene is kind of reminding me of the movie The Descent, which is a really great movie about a bunch of women going cave diving. Again, there's another movie you could watch instead of this, and it'd be a better use of your time. The Descent is very good. Doesn't waste your time. It's got real props and actors. It doesn't go off on random tangents about black goo that make no sense. And on top of that, it doesn't completely shit on the corpse of an already dead franchise and desecrate its grave, like this movie does with Alien. This movie was supposed to be the savior. It was supposed to sort of redeem Alien Resurrection. That's what everyone was hoping, including me, when I hobbled down to my local Milwaukee theater in a fresh diaper and with my best pair of glasses that are the least cracked. And I sat down to watch this movie back in 2012. I gotta say, part of me wished I'd shit my pants while watching this just so I could disrupt the rest of the viewers and give them an excuse to leave. But unfortunately I was constipated, so I could just sit and watch. That's all I could do. So we got this scene with hieroglyphics, which is a common thing among UFO schizophrenics. They think that people painting on cave walls making random shapes after having eaten some random berries in the woods somehow intuited knowledge that science has missed. I gotta be honest, guys. I think that's a load of horse shit. But this movie, its characters are so committed to this random Joe Rogan conspiracy theory that this woman actually starts crying when she sees a cave painting. I'd be crying just because of how rare it is to find an intact cave painting in the first place. But in the context of this movie, the main characters are so infatuated with some alien conspiracy that they actually start weeping, or at least the chick does. I mean, they turn out to be right, so I can't shit all over their perspective too much. Showing this movie to a modern audience back in 2012, I don't know. It's kind of got a lot of same problems as Alien 3. And I don't know if we'll do a numbered criticism like I did of that movie, but I have a feeling I'm going to come up with some points, and we'll end up in that kind of a situation either way. So David's got his Apple Vision Pro headset on, and he's creeping on the cryogenic people frozen in there. He's able to hack into their memories, like Elon Musk's Neuralink-based AI drones will soon be able to do to you. But before that happens, I'll be long dead. And frankly, I'd rather be in hell than be one of you subjected to this. So this guy's hacking into their memories because he wants to be more human. It's an interesting subplot with David. He's not just trying to be a psychopath carrying out the corporation's instructions. He seems to actually desire to be a real person. It's one of the few subplots in this movie that actually makes sense. Problem is, like all the other subplots in this film, it's mishandled. And then, on top of that, there's too many subplots to begin with. A movie can only handle so many things going on at once. And this movie, at least the cut of it that we're watching, is 2 hours and 3 minutes. Hell, Andrei Tarkovsky's Stalker is like 3 or 4 hours. And it only has like 4 characters. And there's only one plot going on. Oh God, I miss the days when people still had attention spans. So David is the creepy android on this ship, if that wasn't already clear. He likes to ride his bicycle while he plays basketball, which is a very crude, awkward, and pathetically obvious reference to Alien Resurrection and the three-pointer shot that Ripley makes. Except in this movie, David making that shot isn't impressive at all. He's a perfectly engineered android. Of course he can make a three-pointer shot while riding a bicycle. And that's just in the context of this movie. Alien Resurrection, that shot Ripley made was so amazing because it wasn't planned. She did it just out of sheer serendipity. It was like a little tiny miracle. And this movie tries to hollowly replicate or reference it, and it doesn't do it any justice at all. It just seems like a very sad, pathetic attempt to call into attention something the audience is familiar with. It's like the audience would watch David make that basket and go, I know what that is. That's a reference to Alien Resurrection, the Joss Whedon masterpiece. It's just hollow. A lot like this scene where he's watching Lawrence of Arabia. People making this film were like, well, David Fassbender kind of looks a lot like Laurence Olivier, so we're going to go ahead and make a reference to Lawrence of Arabia. Because he looks the same. I mean, it's kind of clever on one level, but it's a little heavy-handed for my taste. Why the fuck do we need to see him watching that exact film? Why would he gravitate just towards a movie where the character just looks physically like the robot body that his AI brain happens to be in? If he's concerned with trying to mimic human behavior better and be a better person, he should be watching human psychology videos. Honestly, that would be more creepy too, because you get a sense of how this character understands, on some level, how inhuman he is, so he's trying to make himself more human. And if we saw, like a fly on the wall, like we are in these scenes, how desperate he is to be human, so desperate that he's watching human psychology videos, that'd be a lot creepier. I don't know. I'm an old man. I can only recommend so many things before, I start to think it's pointless. So the plot of this movie is that our characters are going to some planet where there's supposed to be some remnant of something ancient to do with the origins of human life. It's a very big plot idea. It's very kind of ambitious on a philosophical, existential, and religious level. And we're kind of just dropped into things cold. That's part of the stuff that I like about this movie. We don't get a huge exposition dump, we just get little scenes suggesting what the plot is. And then of course we get the reveal that this bitch, this Karen chick, we're just gonna call her Karen, is an actual human. And she's been awake this whole time. It wasn't just Michael Fassbender, or whatever his name is. And then we get a much more grisly cryogenic scene with them all puking. Because, the technology's not at the point it is when the first Alien movie came out. They gotta lie in these piss capsules instead of the nice, clean, dry capsules that the Alien characters are in. And then, of course, we get a very blatant reference to the scene in Alien where they're eating food. I got some Fallout 4 dispensers. This chick's eating a brownie. The Nazi SS Karen officer is creepily staring at everyone. What the fuck? This guy's smoking a stogie on the ship? Isn't that hard on the air filters? Jesus Christ, Idris Elba, do you have to smoke that right next to the Christmas tree? You could set it on fire. Yeah, your breakfast is a cigar. I mean, I'm not shitting on you for that. I gotta have a puff of nicotine in the morning these days or I can't even wake up. So again, here's point number one, guys. I can say this with confidence, even though I haven't watched this movie in like 8 years. Number 1, there are too many characters. Again, what this movie does is dump like 16 characters on us right off the bat. And it expects us to care about all of them, in some way or another. Of course, our main characters are going to be more important than the characters around them. That's normal. But when you got like 12 or 14 ancillary characters, and only like half of them do anything of any value except get killed, it's just a bad idea. I don't know, maybe whatever Hollywood money cult made this film needed to create artificial roles so a bunch of people could pretend to be, actors and stars in this. I don't know anything about that. All I know is that when a movie has too many characters and there's not enough running time or events to develop them, it always sucks. Every single time. So now we got Wayland himself. The man who made the corporation. He's like that Reardon guy in the Atlas Shrugged novel. And he's got the worst old age makeup ever seen. Jesus. The original Evil Dead had better old age makeup than this movie. And it had a $500 trillion budget. God. It looks terrible. So he's talking about David. And of course in this scene, we've cut back to the pre-mission kind of briefing that they all got. And again, look how many characters there are in the audience. These are all people who actually end up on the ship and we're supposed to actually care about them, in some way. And there's just too many of them. Or maybe those 2 military guys in the back don't end up on the ship. My point is there's still too many key characters. There's too many people. You gotta trim it down. You gotta have a nice, small, isolated crew. Like 6 people. Hell, how many characters did the original Alien have? Let's try to count. You got the 2 maintenance guys. You got Ripley. You got Ash. You got the commander guy. You got the woman who's always freaking out. And, I think that's it. There is like one other character. Oh, the cat. That's who I'm thinking of. Jonesy. That's like character number 7. So in the original Alien, you got 6 characters. And I'm not saying you have to have exactly the same number. What I'm saying is that in a movie like this, about a creepy alien in space with a bunch of people who aren't equipped to fight it, I mean, you can't have a cast of like 20 people. It just doesn't work. And you got this fucking long-ass exposition scene. It's like a fucking high school history slideshow. I remember when I paid for my ticket and I was watching this in the theater. This was when I first started to realize I was watching a piece of crap. Because they were trying to make the exposition all cool and flashy. But again, if you paint a wall that's made of cheese, it's still a wall made of cheese. Sun's just gonna melt it down. You can't cover up bad writing and exposition, is what I'm saying. Oh God, this guy's glasses look so out of place. It's the year 2500 or whatever. Don't you have contact lenses or something? Why are you wearing those old horn rim plastic see-through glasses? Wouldn't that interfere with any equipment you'd have to wear on this mission? What is it, a fashion choice? You just wearing them for fun? Jesus. Anyways. They just exposition dumped that they watched Graham Hancock's Netflix special about the Younger Dryas. And so now they're convinced that they can send a bunch of expendable characters on a suicide mission to a planet just to find some ruin or something. And this chick's basically a religious zealot cloaking her religious beliefs in scientific practice. And then you got the Nazi Karen watching them. You got a creepy robot. I mean, it's kind of a recipe for disaster, you know. And, you know, in the writing, people writing this movie were probably like, well, that's part of the tension. She's got all these characters with different motivations, and they're supposed to be on the same mission. Now, in concept, that's good. That makes sense. But again, the problem with this movie is twofold. Number one, the writing's bad. And number two, there's too many characters. I feel like a fucking broken record saying this, but the reason I'm doing this review again is because this is a lot like Alien 3. There's a lot of stuff this movie does right. A lot of stuff I appreciate. Again, the set design is great. They got good performances. A lot of the actors are good. You know, it's got some good things. It's a nice piano there. That's something I can say was well done. But it's all gloss. It's all veneer. It's all a Plato's Cave illusion being pulled over your eyes to try to hide the fact that they knew the writing sucked. Or at least some of them did. I mean, like any movie, they did the best they could. What's really depressing about movies like this is when you consider that this was the best script they could get. I'm not sure how much involvement James Cameron had in the writing of the actual script, because there wasn't really an opening credits sequence like there was in Alien 3. But whatever he did and whoever he got to help him write, it wasn't good enough. I heard rumors when this movie came out that James Cameron had too much involvement, and it was kind of like a George Lucas Star Wars prequel situation, where James Cameron in his old age was like, hey, I still got it. In fact, I don't need any criticism or help at all with the writing. I can just do it myself. Now, I don't know if that's the truth, because I haven't done research, but if it is, I wouldn't be surprised. Again, it doesn't really matter why the writing sucks. The why doesn't matter. What matters is what we're seeing. This is the final product, the culmination of hundreds of millions of dollars of money, dozens, if not hundreds of people's efforts, including actors and set designers and artists and camera people. It was all in service to this nightmarish turd that got rubbed into all of our eyes. I still have to take eye drops for pink eye because I watched this movie when it came out. I had no idea that when I bought my ticket, I was signing away my right to sue the filmmakers for medical malpractice. So again, they got this piss-colored UI for all their computers. I guess Idris Elba gets the blue UI. So again, can you even keep track of all these characters? Just look at how many of them are on screen. Have any of them told you anything about why they're here, why we should care about them, what their motivations are, or in any way what their connection with the narrative is? All we're told is a couple of throwaway lines during the briefing that these guys were basically mercenary type people that were hired because they had some expertise with spaceflight. Does that make any fucking sense? Think about how important this mission is for a second. You got this famous archaeologist who's managed to convince a huge corporation whose leader is kind of a schizo to go to a planet because they think there might be some clue to the origin of human life there. Now, if you're manning that expedition, or rather if you're bankrolling it, if you're determining who's on it, why the fuck would you pick anyone except the most qualified people on the planet Earth to go on this mission? Why the fuck would you cheap out and hire some kind of oil rig worker type guy? I'm not disparaging oil rig work. It's tough. It's hard work. But an oil rig worker is not equipped to encounter the origins of human life. And these characters, we don't get any lines detailing their expertise. We don't know who they are. And again, there's like 14 of them. Why the fuck should we care? How can you expect an audience to identify with that many characters in this short a period of time when you don't even give them any dialogue, suggesting why these people should be on the mission in the first place. If Weyland was such a fucking devotee of all this ancient alien shit, you'd think he would have had very specific people in mind. Maybe the people he hired were actually good people, but they were a little nuts. Instead, you got these people who are like brain donors. Their IQ's barely above room temperature. I guess that brings me to my second point. Okay, guys, here we go. Number 2. The people on the ship can't be idiots. The people on this ship have to be better in every sense of that term. They gotta be smarter, maybe they're quirkier and more eccentric, but they can't be stupid. It's unbelievable how much time this movie wastes for a viewer because its characters make stupid mistakes. Everyone knows about this, they're mapping the structure. They have a 3D map and they still get lost. That's the big meme everybody points to in this movie when they criticize how dumb the characters are. And yes, that's true, but it's even worse than that. It's that these characters, we don't even have any connection to them from the get-go. I mean, compare this movie to any other Alien film. Even Alien 3, at about 26 minutes in, which is where we are now, at least that movie made an attempt to make you care about the rapists on the lead refinery planet. This movie's barely given us any introduction to our main cast, except these 2 people, this archaeologist chick and her boyfriend, and David, who got more screen time introducing his character than our other 2 main characters combined. And he's just a robot. Why not introduce him later on in a kind of cold open type of way, where we just see him watching videos about how to be human? Why do we have to devote 8 minutes to him watching Lawrence of Arabia? What the fucking purpose did that serve at the beginning of the film, when that time could have been better spent developing any of our other characters? I know some of you nerds will argue,
well, David is actually the main character, because he shows up later on in Alien Covenant, and he's the one who experiments with the aliens.
Yeah, I know about that, but at this point we don't know anything about that later plot. David had no point in this movie other than to be a creepy robot, because they gotta have a creepy Weyland-Yutani robot on the ship. It's a representation of humans trying to create AI or artificial people. But that whole thing with him making the aliens didn't come about until 5 movies after this or whatever. In this movie, he doesn't have that big of a role to play, but it's played like he does. Maybe they were trying to set up those later movies, you say. And I'd say, okay, that's fine. But in 2012, when this came out, none of that shit existed. And we had no idea about any of that. This is the problem with trying to plan a franchise where you're going to make 10 movies. If your audience doesn't know that, if it's not like a mini-series, then they have no conception of what your plans for the character are. And you're just wasting time in the initial movie setting things up. You're setting up characters like they're significant, and then they don't have time to prove their significance. And again, meanwhile, I got all these idiot characters, and we don't even know who the fuck they are. This guy's still got his horn-rimmed glasses on under his egg helmet. And what purpose do they serve? Why couldn't you just have contacts? You'd think if you were going into space where every object you carry with you has some weight to it that adds to the overall weight of the ship taking off and the fuel, maybe they'd tell you to take a bunch of contacts instead of your glasses. I don't know. That's a minor point. So this structure is kind of interesting. It's more interesting than these characters, even Idris Elba. So I'm going to talk about it. So if you've ever seen the film Jodorowsky's Dune, which is an infinitely better movie than this in every way possible, that structure of this kind of fat guy, this kind of Baron Harkonnen blob, that was something that H.R. Giger came up with for the Jodorowsky Dune movie, which never got made. That's how I know I'm in hell, 'cause I'm in the timeline where that movie didn't get made. If it had been made in the 60s or early 70s, it probably would have changed society for the better. But instead it fell apart. And, its fragments got spread all around, and different pieces of set design and ideas contributed to things like Star Wars, which I guess is okay, you know. But I still would rather live in the universe where Jodorowsky's Dune got made. My point is just that's where this fat guy sculpture structure that they're in comes from. Comes from that movie. Oh God. Who are these characters? Do you know who they are? I don't know. You could tell me their names. You could remind me of the throwaway lines they got in the briefing scene. I still don't know who they are, and I don't care. They could all die right now, and I wouldn't even react. Giving a guy tattoos on his face doesn't make him interesting. You gotta know why he got those tattoos. Maybe he grew up in a space slum. Maybe he got those tattoos when he joined a gang, and he had to escape from the gang. And he became a miner or something because no other company would hire him. And then he rose in the ranks because he was a clever guy. To the point where Weyland-Yutani himself wanted him hired for this alien expedition. See, look, I just came up with a better backstory for this character in 5 seconds. But this movie is so hollow and soulless and stupid, I couldn't do these characters any justice. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I could even get this far in the commentary, but you know what, guys? We're gonna go the whole way. We're gonna snake our way through the bowels of this H.R. Giger design. We're gonna figure out where the hidden turd is. Also, I want to shout out all you people who watched the last review. That was really nice. It's nice to get some fucking recognition on this channel. And I mean for me, not Madman. I mean, he's tied up in the bathtub right now. I'm talking about me, Mr. Plinkett. I definitely appreciate your viewership. So again, they got these mapping drones, they got all this technology, and somehow they still manage to be stupid. I guess Einstein was right when he said, the limits of human stupidity are limitless, and something else. Again, speaking of stupidity, can you imagine being this dumb? Fucking take off your helmet on an alien planet just 'cause there's water? Oh, it's humid and there's liquid water. Yeah, that's definitely a reason to take off your helmet. If you go to another part of Earth and you breathe in some fungus or bacteria, you can get really sick and even die. This is a completely unknown planet, and this guy just takes off his helmet like it's nothing. I mean, it's like they took some fraternity guys from some frat house, and they said, hey, we'll give you these space suits and take you to an alien planet. Have a fun time, guys. Bring your dune buggies and beer. Ugh. That's what these guys basically are. They're frat guys in a spaceship. Doesn't help that the show or the film shows them drinking all the time. I don't think that's coffee or tea. So you got a bunch of frat guys investigating an H.R. Giger fat guy alien structure. And they're probably all drunk. I mean, I'm not gonna act like I'm better than them. I'm drunk right now. Point is, I'm not investigating a planet that's supposed to hold the origins of humanity in it. So I guess my first 2 suggestions still stand. Number 1, fewer characters. Number 2, they can't be stupid. I mean, really, that might be all I have to say about this film. And of course, David's a robot, so he can sniff this stuff and figure out what it is. But he doesn't tell the other crew members. And also, somehow he's able to magically figure out how to solve this apparent stone touchscreen puzzle just by sniffing the nanobots. And he doesn't tell anybody anything. I get that David's supposed to be a creepy villain in this, but it's not set up. It's not explained. This movie is vague when it needs to be less vague, and it has tons of exposition where it needed to be more vague. It's like it's flip-flopped. It's like they knew they made a mistake in one area and tried to overcompensate in another. It just doesn't work. So they see these holographic ghosts go by. And then we get a Blair Witch camera of them running down the intestines of the structure. Running after the ghost. Maybe chasing a ghost isn't a good idea. If it's a ghost, that might mean that, that it died or something. And it turns out they're right. There's the body. Again, they all took their helmets off. It's not a good idea. Oh my god, it's the aliens. They found one. Yeah, it's clear he's been decapitated. You don't have to say it out loud. And then we got a pointless shot of Idris Elba reacting. Again, you got too many characters to the point where you gotta have pointless, corny reaction scenes like this to remind us that these characters even exist. Why does Idris Elba on the ship matter for this expedition? Unless something goes wrong and they have to contact the ship to be rescued, the captain of the ship, it's pointless to show him reacting to things. He's gonna see the footage at some point anyways. Now this guy has to say that because he's a geologist, that means he loves rocks. That's for the idiots in the audience who don't know what a geologist is. Jesus Christ, this movie fucking sucks. That's like someone saying, I'm a doctor. That means I love cutting people up and healing them. That's how dumb the filmmakers think the audience is. This whole movie's a fucking embarrassment. Was this a humiliation ritual for Ridley Scott before he got whisked away to some Japanese island so he could drink blood while the meteors kill the rest of us? Is that what this was? Nothing surprises me anymore. Oh, and they brought a nice ladder with them. That's great. Some epic technology there. And again, David's looking at all this shit and he's not telling anybody anything. You'd think they would have programmed into his brain some subroutine where he has to inform the other members of the crew what he's fucking found. I guess the plot is the Wayland Yutani guy or whatever. He liked David so much as like a surrogate son. He devoted all his time to his company, so he couldn't have a real kid. So he had to build one out of robot parts. But then his real kid is like, it's like kind of a spoiled brat. Like he doesn't tell anybody anything that he finds. He's trying to be human, but he can't really do it. And he doesn't really understand human life. Doesn't have any sympathy. I guess that makes sense, but it's a terrible plot point for a movie about aliens. Again, too much emphasis was put on characters who weren't well developed, and there's characters who weren't developed at all that get a ton of emphasis. It doesn't make any sense. So then they're in this kind of creepy, dark, evil Sistine Chapel. And our characters are just mindlessly wandering around without any attempt to understand what they're seeing. Contrast this with the first Alien movie when they find the room with the eggs. Remember how cautious they were? Remember how they didn't take off their helmets immediately? Remember how concerned everybody was about their safety? Then you got this scene where it's like these characters just want to die. It's like the jumping headfirst into a fucking active volcano or something. And then you got this mural, which however you interpret the lore about aliens makes no sense. You got a xenomorph body on display. And then you got some kind of Wizard of Oz green crystal. And the problem is that xenomorph structure on the wall only happens when this alien creature grows out of a human a bunch of times. So how could the person who sculpted that mural have predicted that that's what the black goo would become after going through people? That doesn't make any sense because most of the aliens in these new alien universe movies, they look kind of fucked up and different than the ones from the original. Again, it's a convoluted attempt to use vagueness and inconsistency and substitute them for interesting writing. Just because something's vague and inconsistent doesn't make it mysterious or interesting. Mysterious and interesting things have a continuity to them. There's a pattern the viewer follows that leads to a conclusion, or some kind of mystery that needs to be solved. But if something's intentionally vague and inconsistent, and you just keep throwing random clues that lead in different directions, it just fucks with the viewer's brain and it starts to hurt. And your viewers start to hate the franchise. Even idiots will catch on to this. You can't trick them that easily. It's much easier to spend an extra 2 months and hire a better writer and make the foundation of your film actually make fucking sense. If you do that, then even the idiots will be impressed. Instead, they got this bullshit scenario where David steals some of the alien cum. And meanwhile, they're taking an alien head back to the ship. Why would you not take the entire body? What is it, way too much? Is it fossilized or something? Why would you just take the head? Why would you not all be exposed to, exactly what you've been exposed to and have to go through quarantine? Instead, it's like a comedy. They're running across the... Oh, and look, they got the dune buggy here. Or did Patrick Stewart direct this scene? Did he want there to be a dune buggy chase? Jesus Christ. H.R. Giger is rolling in his grave. There's his skull. Yeah, I hope the sandstorm shreds this entire film, and I'll never have to talk about it again. God, this is like Mad Max or something. How embarrassing. Oh, look how big the sandstorm is. I wonder if they'll get back in time. Be nice if we killed off some of the useless characters. I mean, that's their only purpose. It's just to die. Oh no, she got hit with the sandstorm. Oh, I care so much about these characters. I definitely hope her face wasn't shredded into 1,000 pieces during that sandstorm. So then Idris Elba's got to open the door. And again, they're sort of trying to mirror the first Alien where they bring something back to the ship that they shouldn't have brought back. The only problem is, every single aspect of that reference makes no sense. You have too many characters who are too stupid. You have a totally different situation where they're here intentionally. It's not some kind of emergency beacon. And again, what they're bringing back is something that they probably should have left there. There's no adherence to any sort of logical quarantine. Nobody seems to care about continuity. As a friend of mine said, this movie should be nuked from orbit. It's very difficult to suggest what should have been done better. I mean, if there were fewer, smarter characters, basically none of these scenes would play out the same way. It's not the same as Alien 3, where a lot of the basic elements of the plot make sense. I guess if they're at this point, they've gotten to this planet, in my rewrite of this, if they were better characters, I guess what I would recommend is that they go about the whole thing differently when they encounter the structure. Maybe they send in David first. In fact, that's a good idea. It gives us a lot of opportunities. We'll go with that. Number 3. David is sent into the H.R. Giger structure first. So in this film, because David's a robot, and they can just hose him down with bleach when he comes back to the ship if he's infected with anything, they would send him in alone with the geological 3D mapping orbs. So then David would be the one going through the whole place, analyzing things, and figuring out what the fuck is there. Meanwhile, we'd have a tense scene with the 4 or 5 characters total that are left on the ship, and they'd be watching through, David's camera in his suit. That'd make for a very tense scene. We know David's a robot, but he could still be destroyed, and our characters are concerned about any contamination because they're not morons. So if they sent David in on his own, and he basically discovered everything that we just saw our whole group of idiots discover, that would probably make this scene and this part of the film work a lot better. Let's say David finds the head, as corny and cheesy as that is, and he brings it back with him. He's like, the body's fossilized, it's glued to the floor. I can't move it, even with my robot strength. So David comes back, he gets decontaminated after having never taken his helmet off like a retard. And he comes back with the head. So in addition to my first 2 rewrites, fewer characters and smarter ones, rewrite number 3 would be that David came back. And so then this scene basically that we're seeing right now, at around 46 minutes, 27 seconds, would play out about the same. They'd be analyzing the head. So let's just pretend we didn't see any of the retardation that we just had to sit through. So this Karen character's watching over them. I don't mind her. She's actually a better character than David in a lot of respects. In fact, you could just combine the 2 of them together. Maybe make David a female robot or something. Anyways, they take off this Nephilim guy's helmet, and they reveal that it's one of the dudes from the first Alien. I don't mind this reference. It's kind of interesting to put a face to that creepy fossil that we saw in 1979. I remember when I saw that movie in theaters. Oh my God, it was good. People ran out of the theater puking. That was the most entertaining thing about that experience. The only people who run out of movie theaters puking now are the ones who went to Paul Blart Part 3. Okay, so now they're putting sticks into the guy's brain. Again, they're not doing this behind some kind of fume hood or in some kind of controlled environment. They're totally exposed to all the biological tissue of this thing. And they're trying to electrocute his brain into being alive like fucking Frankenstein. I mean, this scene is so comical I can't even talk about it. Alien Resurrection makes more sense than this fucking crap. I mean, Jesus Christ, why the fuck would you do anything other than carefully dissect this thing? Why would you try to electrocute it into life? You'd think that at this point in history, people would have progressed past, the 1800s methodology of trying to examine things. Let's just shock it with electricity, why not? Jesus. Why not start putting sacred oils on it and trying to chant it back to life? These people are so fucking stupid, it's insane. At least Alien Resurrection is funny. This movie is not. Now David's talking on his Apple Vision Pro, and oh, what a big mystery, who could he possibly be talking to? It's not like Wayland Yutani came on this mission in secret. That's not obvious at all. This movie treats the viewers like we have an IQ below room temperature, and I don't appreciate that. We're almost at the halfway point, guys. I promise I'm gonna make it there before I cut the video. Oh shit, there she is creepily standing there like Blair Witch. Oh, it's Miss Vicky's. I love those chips. They have a good vinegar flavor. So David's kind of gatekeeping about Wayland, and this chick doesn't like it. At this point, when I first saw this movie, I wondered if she was a robot too. To be honest, I can't remember if she is, but I don't think she is. Basically, she's jealous that David has some kind of better connection with Wayland. So I think she's Wayland's daughter or secretary or something. Maybe she was in like a Harvey Weinstein situation, but with that creepy old man. Ugh. I'd rather blow Harvey Weinstein than the Wayland from this film. Jesus. So now David, of course, has unrestricted access to this extremely volatile, unknown, biologically hazardous piece of alien technology. There's no regulations or procedures in place to prevent him from just fucking with it. Apparently Wayland just gave him authority to do whatever he wants. And why the fuck would David not have immediately killed the entire crew, done the whole mission himself, and then just analyzed this shit on his own? You'd think that his robot brain would have come to the conclusion that the crew was a liability, because they're all idiots. I mean, if he's a perfect robot, that's what he would have done, right? And if Wayland basically gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wants, without anybody having to look after him, or basically without anybody having any kind of control over what he does, then why would he not just do that? Why would he not just kill everyone? Because they're a pain in the ass liability. Instead, we got this creepy, stupid scene of him opening up the green dildos that have the black cum inside them. And of course, this chick's having a scientific religious revelation that the black goo is all DNA that's ever existed. Man, it's too bad you're paying attention to that and not watching this creepy android who's about to kill you all. And again, this android's pretty stupid. Maybe he's an older model, but he's contaminating the entire ship with this shit. And don't you fucking talk to me about how the later movies retcon his behavior as some kind of grand conspiracy. At this point in this franchise, we have no idea about any of that. And if it was supposed to be set up that he was supposed to do that, this is not the medium to do that in. It's not an 8-hour miniseries where we're going to watch the next episode, next week. It's not the same thing. It doesn't work. The vagueness and the inconsistency are just that. Vagueness and inconsistency. So we're supposed to be having some conversation about the futility of their mission. And to be honest, if I orchestrated a mission with these morons, I'd think it was pretty futile from the get-go. So I kind of sympathize with David in this scene. Again, this would have been a much more interesting movie if David had just slaughtered all the characters. He kind of does that, but in a roundabout way, because he's trying to experiment on him. And again, he's established as a creepy, ambiguous character who's supposed to be a villain, I get that. But the way this whole thing plays out is so incredibly stupid that it doesn't matter. His character has no basic opportunity to do anything meaningful because all these characters they're not just guinea pigs. They're essential parts of the mission. There's pilots, mechanics, surveyors, geologists, biologists. If these characters were supposed to be expendable guinea pigs, then why wouldn't they just have put them in cryosleep and had David fuck with them as soon as he got to the planet? If Wayland had some idea that there was some kind of black goo magical shit here, and these characters were somehow intended to be guinea pigs, which wasn't the case, but I'm being very generous. If that's the case, then why not just keep them in cryosleep the whole time, and then infect them when he got here and watch how they mutate? That's essentially what David ends up doing. So the movie plays out the same way either way. And all this shit is just pointless. Oh, they were having an alien orgy. Ooh, now they're even harder than rock. I wish I could still get that hard. What riveting dialogue. It exploded from the inside, like my brain when I first saw this film. Again, they're tracking them with this advanced computer, and at some point in this movie, one of them still manages to get lost. Poor Idris Elba has nothing to do for like 3/4 of this fucking film. He just looks at screens and makes a few quips. What a waste. I was asking him why he's still wearing those glasses. Take them off. You look like a fucking idiot. I wonder how much Idris Elba got paid for his 6 minutes total of screen time in this. Probably more than I'll make in my entire life. That's depressing. Again, it's like Idris Elba just got out of bed. Why is no one monitoring these guys if they're on an active mission with live cameras? Contrast this with any scene from Aliens when the soldiers are investigating the colony. Ripley and everyone else is staring at them constantly, trying to figure out what's going on and if they're in danger or not. Maybe Idris Elba knows how expendable and retarded these characters are, so he just doesn't care. He's in his Scottish bathrobe and drinking his coffee. He doesn't even give a shit. Again, this movie's more like Alien Resurrection than it has any right to be. But it's also not funny at all. God, and the corny dialogue is so fucking embarrassing. Imagine writing this and then also imagine greenlighting it. Both the writer and whoever greenlit this should be equally embarrassed. It's unbelievably pathetic. Ooh, this chick's vaping though. Oh no, she's talking into a communicator. And of course she's a cool otaku who eats noodles with chopsticks on a spaceship. Very epic, guys. I think I found my wife. My waifu. Oh, this guy steps through the screen. She was watching that. Let her watch it. What are you doing interrupting her? And this guy, for all his commitment to this chick, never seems sold on her whole religious, scientific, ancient aliens bullshit. Maybe he just wants to get some pussy. That's the only reason. Again, the characters in this are so reprehensible and one-dimensional, I wouldn't be surprised. Oh God. It's like kissing a cardboard cutout. Why even bother? Plus, he'll probably be dead in 2 scenes anyways. So, of course, in this scene, she's showing him that her whole weird belief system's been vindicated because of the black cum. Ah, yes, black cum was always the solution to everything. That makes complete sense, guys. I don't know. God, this dialogue is like a high schooler trying to write something philosophical. What if they question where they came from? People have never done that throughout history. Jesus Christ. If I was an actor in this, I think I just would have killed myself after this came out. Or while it was being filmed. Who could possibly recite this dialogue with a straight face? At least the people in Alien Resurrection probably had some sense that what they were making was a joke. Because it's so obvious. This is not, because it's not meant to be a joke. It's depressing. Oh, Jesus Christ, I can't stand this. I'm gonna fucking puke. Don't kiss him, he's got the black cum inside him. Don't do it. Your DNA is being corrupted by black cum. Oh no, she's taking off her shirt, guys. We're gonna have a sexy scene. Oh God. I'd rather watch 2 aliens fucking than these 2 people. Ooh, I'd rather watch this Karen chick do anything. I'd rather watch her take a shit. Instead, she's staring at the H.R. Giger bloated structure. And of course we have one of the worst scenes in the entire film, where Idris Elba's brought a fucking hurdy-gurdy with him onto his ship. Again, what was the weight limit? Is fuel not an issue and you can just take whatever random crap you want on a space mission? Doesn't make any fucking sense. This whole movie sounds like a dying cat, you fucking cunt. I don't even care what kind of reference Idris Elba's making. This is an entirely self-indulgent, egotistical, vanity-type scene where Idris Elba probably said, "Okay, I'll be in your movie, but I have to be a badass captain who drinks whiskey and plays a weird old instrument. And the creepy but attractive blonde chick has to come on to me, or I have to come on to her." And the Hollywood producers were so desperate to get star power into this movie that they were like, "Okay, Idris Elba, we'll give you this scene and we'll shove it into the movie even though it makes no sense." Anyway, guys, I gotta cut things off for a bit here and refill my vodka Gimli. So, hope you've enjoyed this commentary so far. I'm trying to ride the wave of my previous video doing so well, so I hope this one wasn't a poor imitation of it that seems like a desperately shat-out attempt to ride the wave of that initial burst of views, because it's definitely not that. Anyway, guys, I'll be back in a second. You won't even notice it. Alien out. Hello again, ladies and germs. I'm back. So, we're gonna watch the other half of this movie. We're gonna try to be a bit more pragmatic and focused on how it could be improved. I've kind of gotten over the shock of how bad this was now. I think the latter half of this review is gonna be a little less somber and depressing. Sorry if anybody didn't like the first part of it. But if you watched this for the first time in 8 years and you forgot how bad it was, I hope you sympathize. So okay, we had one point. That was that the characters are too numerous in nature. There's gotta be fewer of them. Point number 2 was that they can't be idiots. And point number 3 was basically that they should have sent David in, which basically makes the scene we're watching right now with the worm completely pointless. In my rewrite, this scene wouldn't exist. David would have found the head and found this room, and they would have gone back to the ship. And of course, when they analyzed the head, they wouldn't have done it like a couple of 5-year-olds encountering an anthill on their driveway. They would have actually behaved like real scientists. So let's speculate about what they would have done with the head while we talk over this incredibly stupid scene that I have no vocabulary to criticize because it's so terrible. There's no terms in the English language that could possibly be applied to it. So let's say that when they analyze the head, they find that there's a microbe in the bloodstream of the brain, and they start to analyze this microbe. And let's say that David is the one doing the analysis because he's the smartest character on the ship. Remember, in my rewrite, these characters wouldn't be stupid. I know it's hard to imagine that while watching this guy literally reach out to an unknown organism and get his hand wrapped around and he basically gets raped. But just ignore what you're seeing on the screen and focus on my commentary. So in my rewrite, David would be analyzing the thing they found inside the head of the dead alien. And they would have figured out that it was some kind of biological or nanomachine type thing. Some kind of organism that mutates rapidly and adapts to its environment at an unprecedented rate. And let's say that David, when he's analyzing this thing, he's making references, he's doing research, and he starts to describe the actual function of this organism. Maybe this is the moment when we have some actually interesting exposition, where David looks at this organism and he goes, well, this thing can adapt rapidly, but then when it gets together in cell clusters that are really big, it kind of fossilizes. In a way, it can't adapt anymore, or it can't adapt as fast. So basically what he would say about this black goo shit that he found in the alien head was that it's very fast to adapt to its environment when it's a microbe, or when it's in small clusters of cells. But as soon as it takes on a big, human-sized type of shape, It can't adapt as fast anymore. So it'd be like this biological weapon. David would probably intuit that just from analyzing it. He'd be like, holy shit, this thing's a bioweapon. And the implication would be pretty shocking. It'd be pretty creepy. The implication would be that humanity itself as a species was some kind of mutated byproduct of another alien's bioweapon that they used against some other rival alien race in the distant past. This makes human origin not as epic and divine as any of our characters thought it was. It adds a very cynical, dark, nihilistic, Lovecraftian dimension to the whole film, which again, like Alien 3, was what this movie was trying to establish. But it did a very poor job of it, a piss poor job, in fact, as piss poor as the piss cryotubes these characters crawled out of. So again, David figures all this out on his own. And in my rewrite of this movie, I guess David's free to not tell the other characters. I guess that makes sense. I don't know. Maybe he's obligated to tell Wayland. Okay, let's go with that. So David figures all this out once he analyzes the alien's head. And maybe he takes the knowledge and he conceals it from the crew. That'd be a lot more interesting than him pointlessly and stupidly poisoning the crew with random nanomachines or biological, viruses or whatever that he has no idea, about the nature of in any way. Instead, in my rewrite, David keeps this knowledge from the crew, and we as viewers get to see his deception. That creates the same tension. So then David has to report to Wayland, who's of course still in his piss pod. He's in cryosleep. And David reports to him, he says, look, I discovered this black goo. It turns out humanity is the byproduct of an alien war. We're not significant or divine, but as a robot I don't care about that. That's verbatim what he would say to Wayland in my rewrite. But anyways, David basically admits this to Wayland, and Wayland goes, okay, that's pretty fucking shocking. I almost had a heart attack in my piss tube. And so then David receives some instructions from Wayland that we don't get to hear. He's wearing his Apple Vision Pro. Apple's all about privacy, except when they sell your data to the NSA. Anyway, David's talking to Wayland. Wayland tells him something that we as viewers don't get to hear, and David just nods. Then he takes off his headset and he goes back to rejoin the crew. So at this point, David would tell the crew that he has to go back to the structure and keep exploring, because they only explored a small part of it before they found the alien head. And the crew would go, okay, you came back okay the first time, but we want to send a couple of crew members with you this time. That's just a decision in the writing of the script that ups the stakes, because now it's not just David who's in danger, it's some real human crew members. And in my rewrite, they would go on a second expedition, kind of like what's happening now at about 1 hour and 8 minutes. They'd go back to the ship and they'd explore a different part of it. But it'd be David and 2 other crew members, and they'd be wearing their fucking helmets this time. I don't know, maybe they can look at some control panel on the ship, figure out the air is clean, and take off their helmets later on. I don't know, maybe that could be a thing, but at this point, they'd be wearing their fucking spacesuits because they're professionals and they're not brain donors. So David and whichever other 2 characters went with him would basically be discovering this exact room just like we're seeing right now. This is the navigator's, it's the navigation area. God, just look at all these characters. Do you remember their names? Do you know who they are? Do you care about any of them? I'm guessing the answer to most of those questions is no. And of course in the movie we're seeing, the shitty one that I'm rewriting, our main character clearly has some kind of incredibly dangerous alien pink eye infection in his eye. He took the Egyptian eye worm and joined the satanic cult. Bad decision. Even Christopher Lee knew that that was a bad idea. You don't want to join those people. You'll end up in hell like me. So, okay, we got Idris Elba, and they're going over the canopic jars, because that's what these things are ripping off. They're just Egyptian canopic jars. That's all they are. It's not like the West is a society where we continually revive people. Keep them, you know, confined in little coffins like Egyptian mummies and then revive them at our convenience. That's what this movie's implying. Anyway, enough with that crap. Obviously, the guy who touched the worm is dead. At least there's that continuity. There's one less idiot for us to have to suffer through in this film. It's almost like you shouldn't fuck with these worms in any way, shape, or form. You're not Muad'Dib from Dune. You're not immune to worms. Or actually, it's Muad'Dib's son Paul that's immune to the worms. Anyway, I'm getting off track, guys. Let's get back to how I would improve this film. So basically, in my rewrite, they'd be going back to the structure like they are in this scene. And maybe the creepy Nazi chick is still watching them from the ship. That kind of works. Her or Idris Elba, either or. Again, in my rewrite, there's half as many characters as there is in this crap. So you have fewer characters to choose from, but they're better developed and we care about what happens to them. So in this movie, we gotta have some kind of payoff to the whole human origin thing. And in my rewrite, David already discovers the cynical truth and he's trying to keep it from the human characters. And that's under Wayland's instructions. I don't mind Wayland being a character. I think it's kind of interesting that he actually had the balls to travel on this ship with a bunch of rig workers to come on this basic suicide mission. I mean, you know, he's dying anyway, so I guess that's not that brave. But it's kind of cool that he risked his life anyway. So basically in my rewrite, I think this scene would probably still happen. David would find the navigator room, he'd look at the holograms. But he already knows that humanity was basically created by accident by these much more advanced creatures. They made a black goo substance that they used in some kind of intergalactic war 10 billion years ago. And, you know, some of that goo contaminated a planet that we call Earth, and it made us. It's a very depressing, nihilistic, cynical, bleak, Lovecraftian view of human origin. But I get the feeling that's what the filmmakers were going for. If you're going to go for it, then actually go for it, and have the balls to write it in a way that doesn't suck ass. Get a writer involved who can lay out events in the plot, write dialogue, and describe scenes in ways that actually do justice to such a heavy, dense kind of perspective. I mean, for fuck's sake. It's not something you can just write off with a couple throwaway lines. Anyways, I gotta say the music in this scene is good. At least they did that right. I like this track. It's a good music track. So at this point, David's hacking into the mainframe of the engineer people. And you're seeing all sorts of galaxies floating around. I think I probably would have kept this scene in my rewrite. It would almost be exactly the same. David knows the bleak origins of humanity, but because he's not human, he's not emotionally affected by it. And again, in my rewrite, none of our characters would have been told this. And here's one edit I'll make to this scene. Basically, David grabs hold of Earth and he's like, okay, Earth was part of the aliens' designs or something. In my rewrite, Earth in this scenario, this hologram, it would have been an accidental contaminant zone where some of the black goo landed on a meteorite or something where it wasn't supposed to. And the engineers would be arguing about what to do with it. Basically, the scene would keep going. It's ended right now at an hour 14-20 seconds. In my rewrite, the scene would keep going, and David would see the engineers arguing about what to do about Earth. Maybe that argument about how to handle a virgin planet that was accidentally contaminated by the engineer's bioweapon, maybe that argument broke into violence. Maybe these supposedly advanced creatures or beings actually had a fundamental disagreement about what to do with regards to Earth. Maybe that argument erupted into violence. Maybe that explains the entire plot of the inhabitants of the H.R. Giger, bloated, corpulent, the thing that they're inside, the structure. That would explain why a bunch of people got killed, and by people I mean engineer aliens. Basically, they got into an existential moral argument about what to do about Earth. And because they're an advanced people, they value morality and they want to, do what's right. And the argument erupted into violence. Ironically, they became primitive and they started attacking each other. And this engineer David just found in his cryotube a few seconds ago, he was the only survivor. He killed everybody else. And as viewers, we know what David knows, but we don't know, what the nature of that surviving engineer is. We don't know if he's pro-human, if he wants to preserve Earth, or if he wants to destroy it. But David would have some insight that our other characters don't have. If you want some drama where David knows more than the other characters, and his morality is ambiguous because he's keeping things from them, at least make the information he's keeping have some kind of meaning to the overall plot. Oh God, I guess I should talk about this scene. This guy got his eye parasite in him and now he's mutating and he's just gonna have to be killed. This is an extremely poor imitation of the scene from the first Alien, where, they bring that one crew member back who's infected. And of course there's a corny sacrifice scene where the guy somehow has a moment of clarity where he realizes he's infected and he lets himself get burned. Again, this is a lot like the calf scene from Alien 3. It's very dramatic, and yes, it touches on a lot of Judeo-Christian religious concepts of sacrifice, but it's out of place in the narrative. It doesn't make sense when it comes to this story. It's fine to have this woman, this archaeologist that we're seeing, have a religious affiliation. That's fine. People need religion. It helps. And this creepy David scene where he's taking a cross off. It's like Lucifer taking, your faith away in Christ and blah, blah, blah. Problem is when you try to evoke these type of symbols in a movie where the characters are hollow, poorly developed, uninteresting, and where the plot makes no sense. It doesn't matter how many epic, symbolic, dramatic scenes you include. Symbolism's a powerful thing, just like metaphor and simile. But if your characters don't matter, if the audience has no connection to them, if they're poorly developed, or if there's too many of them, or the decisions make no sense, makes them seem like idiots, then it doesn't matter how visually interesting or symbolically rich your movie is. At the end of the day, characters are the anchor of the whole film. You can't have a film without characters. I know a bunch of you nerds are gonna say,
Well, the French made a movie in 1961 which was just about concrete blocks, and the concrete blocks had an anthropomorphic character to them, so there were no people in the whole film.
I'm sure there's a million postmodern films that do shit like that. But the problem is they still need to anthropomorphize the objects. There still needs to be something the viewer's observing that they identify with. And in most movies, 99.9% of them, in fact, that's the human characters on the screen. Even if you use AI to make completely fake actors or characters out of nothing, they're still going to be human-shaped and cater towards a human audience. That means there still need to be characters that we would actually care about seeing. Their struggles need to have meaning. And if they're stupid characters who are poorly developed who we don't care about, it doesn't matter if you put them through the 12 trials of Hercules. Those trials only have meaning because we care about the person going through them. If the person's poorly developed, then the whole story collapses. It just falls apart. Okay, so this scene in my rewrite probably wouldn't have even happened, because this chick's boyfriend wouldn't have been infected. We gotta have some drama where someone's infected with an alien, right? So here's my rewrite of that scenario. Number 4. David gets infected with an alien. So this movie would center around David, but instead of front-loading the film with a bunch of bullshit with him watching Lawrence of Arabia, we'd instead get character development scenes when he's going through the H.R. Giger fat guy sculpture. That's where we get a sense of who he is, that he wants to be human. Basically, the human characters are using him like a humanoid-shaped drone to explore the ruins. Because they're not retarded, they understand the risks of exploring an alien planet and an alien structure. If David gets killed by collapsing bricks, or if he gets some kind of weird virus or some other kind of shit all over him, he's not in danger. That's why our main characters are using him. Nothing like that has been done in the other Alien films, except with Bishop in a brief scene in Aliens, where he crawls through a pipe. This would be a much more developed version of that type of scene, where we see an artificial, robotic, humanoid character put in a situation where he's at risk, a risk the other characters didn't want to take. So in a sense, he's like a sacrifice. They put this character in front of them, like a shield. Anyways, my point with this is that David would have gone into the structure. He would have done all the risky work. And when he comes out, maybe he's got a sample of the black goo with him, or maybe he doesn't. In this movie's case, he fucked with the crew using a sample of black goo. I don't think that was a good idea. In my rewrite, he found the black goo in the guy's head. The engineer alien's head. And like I said, he would have figured some stuff out that he kept from the crew. Maybe just him knowing about that virus was enough to sort of infect him with it. Maybe instead of experimenting on the crew, he starts to merge his own artificial body with the alien goo. In a sense, he impregnates himself. Instead of experimenting like a psychopath on his human crew members, which would probably be against his programming if anyone programming him had half a brain, he would use himself as the experimental petri dish. He'd use himself as the subject of the black goo experiment. I don't think this would make the movie any less tense or make David any less creepy. Again, there's real examples of this in real life. The guy who figured out that E. coli, or not E. coli, the fuck am I talking about? H. pylori. The guy who figured out that stomach ulcers were caused by bacteria was a scientist. He advanced his theory through his papers, but his peers disagreed with him. So he got so frustrated that he literally drank a culture of the bacteria, gave himself stomach ulcers, and then cured himself with antibiotics. And they gave him the Nobel Prize. The Nobel Prize is basically a prize that scientists give each other when they go, "Wow, dude, you got more balls than 99% of scientists. You used your own body as a petri dish. Good for you." So in my rewrite of this film, David would have merged the black goo with his own body. And that means that the first alien would not be coming out of this woman in this grisly abortion scene that we're seeing. Instead, it would have come out of David. Maybe there's a similar scene where he takes it out of himself. I don't know what David's made out of. I don't know if he's a Blade Runner alien or if he's made of white goo like Ash. Let's say he is. Let's say that the black goo somehow adapted to his biologically, sterile robot body. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but I think it'd be creepy because it would show us a type of alien we haven't seen before. Something that was able to adapt to David's artificial body and somehow still use it to get sustenance and replicate. Maybe the alien that comes out of David actually does look totally different. A lot like this creepy sperm cum squid that we're seeing. Is this movie a psyop to make women not want to have kids? Is this supposed to make normal pregnancy seem alien and weird? I don't know, the tech cultists want us to upload our brains to the internet or something. So maybe this is some kind of childless soy boy San Francisco psyop to make people want to upload their brains. If you think uploading your brain to some server is going to make you more free, I mean, you deserve all the hellish consequences of that line of thought. Anyways, in my rewrite, David would have birthed an alien. Maybe it didn't come out of his body, that's a little too stupid. Maybe he just grew it in a petri dish. If David's ultimate purpose in the films that came after this one was that he experiments with the aliens, then why not just start it in this film? Give it some actual basis and continuity. So maybe David doesn't, birth the alien. That's kind of stupid anyway. Maybe instead of that, he just starts experimenting with it. He doesn't have to use the living crew members that we care about on the ship, because that makes him kind of irredeemable as a character. Instead, maybe he just grows a petri dish of the black goo by feeding it, agar, which is the goop they put into petri dishes to make bacteria grow. Maybe he just feeds the thing and then, he just watches it grow. And maybe it just becomes a kind of alien. And he's sympathetic to it because he's a scientist. Oh, God. They had to get this guy to come back as a zombie. This scene is so pathetic. It's like they fucked up the first scene with him, so they had to bring him back to, fill time. I don't even want to talk about it. Let's talk about my rewrite instead. And it's a better use of our time. So anyways, let's say that the alien David creates is unlike anything we've seen in this franchise. Maybe it's just a random blob with tentacles. That'd be an interesting Lovecraft reference. Whatever it looks like, it doesn't look like a typical xenomorph. That would distinguish this movie from the previous ones, but it would kind of keep the flavor of unfamiliarity, alienness. So let's say David's creation is what wreaks havoc on the ship. So at this point in the film, at about 1 hour and 26 minutes, instead of the crew fighting a zombie of a character they already killed, and then crushing it comically in a scene that would rival Alien Resurrection in its, stupidity, let's say instead they're combating some completely unknown creature, something that David created that got out of his control. In my rewrite of this movie, probably David would have been killed by that creature. And he wouldn't have come back in later films unless it was another model of him, made on some robot factory on Earth. Because the David in this film, if he makes an abomination, it's like Dr. Frankenstein. The abomination's supposed to kill him. I think that would have made sense. So anyways, there wouldn't have been this dramatic scene with a mostly naked chick who just had an alien cut out of her in an abortion scene. Again, this film has some creepy antinatalist kind of shit in it. I'm not into politics, but I gotta mention it, because she literally is traumatized by being impregnated. And part of the plot is that this chick's infertile, she couldn't get pregnant. So the movie's like, well, what if an alien raped you? Then you could get pregnant. And she's like, no, I don't want that. And it's just weird, man. And there's this scene, it makes no fucking sense. They're oiling his feet. The fuck is this? What is this? Directed by Quentin Tarantino? Is this a foot fetish film? Jesus Christ. Imagine wasting time composing all these shots. The fuck is the point? What's the benefit? This old age makeup is so bad it takes me out of the entire universe of the film. Hell, this movie makes all previous Alien movies less believable. Even considering that this character with this bad makeup could exist in the same universe delegitimizes the earlier films. So this guy just doesn't want to die. Have you tried adrenochrome? That seems to be popular these days. I don't know, I haven't tried it myself. I don't have enough money or influence to get any, and I wouldn't want to. I'm already in hell. If I take that stuff, they'll send me to super hell. I don't want to know what that's like. God, the scene is so comical, it's like worse than a cartoon. The old age accent sucks. Makeup sucks. It's so cheesy and corny. Did they intend to make this like an Alien Resurrection spiritual sequel? Is that the point? If not, they sure did it unintentionally. And he talks about faith. Again, the subplot with religion is so ham-fisted and shoved in, it makes no sense. This chick pursued her, dream about finding human origins, and they play it off as like a fusion of her scientific expertise and her religious beliefs. But it makes no sense. If you traveled this far across the galaxy, because you were emotionally driven by religion and intellectually driven by science, and then you come across all this horrible nonsense, and this old guy tells you something about how he wants to use your faith, wouldn't you still be intellectually aware that you're being manipulated? I mean, this chick's not stupid. She's played out as an expert in archaeology and science or whatever. Wouldn't you know that Wayland was trying to manipulate you with your faith? Maybe leave your faith on Earth, where it originated. When you go to a totally different planet, maybe just open your mind scientifically to what you're seeing. Anyway, Idris Elba's back here to, motivate her. He's so fucking useless in this movie. All he does is walk around and make quips and play a hurdy-gurdy. He's a better actor than this. Fuck's sake, make him one of the main characters. He's better than the other idiots you had in this narrative. Not making, judgment against the actors. They did the best they could with what they were given. What I'm judging is the characters and how they were written, which was poorly or not at all. Guys, this movie's sapping my energy. I think I need another vodka Gimlick. So I'm going to cut things off again. Sorry to cut this into 3 parts, but I want this to be at least a half-decent review. Let's go over things before I leave. Number 1, fewer characters. Number 2, characters can't be stupid. Number 3, David gets sent in to go through the H.R. Giger structure. I don't think I had a number 4 yet. Number 4 would have been this movie should never have been made. Now let's go with that. Anyway, I hope you like this commentary so far. I'll see you in a sec. H.R. Giger out. Hello everyone, we're back. We got Idris Elba and our epic main character chick. I got these creepy orange Tron suits on with like the Tron rubber lines on them or something. Anyway, guys, this movie's been a pretty big slog for me. I feel kind of like this character with the bad old age makeup on. I'm struggling just to get through this, but I want to do another video for you guys, because I really do genuinely appreciate the views the last video got. I'm glad I was able to entertain you guys. It's the reason I'm up here. The reason I was brought back up from hell was to entertain people. Most of the time, again, I feel like this old guy. But if at least I can provide some entertainment, that's why I'm supposed to be here. So again, this guy's talking to his daughter. And in my rewrite of this, where so many plot points have changed, I think this scene could still be a thing. And this chick's talking about how he's like a king or something and he's gonna die. She's trying to like usurp his throne as the company, CEO or whatever. And then she creepily sniffs his fingers in an unnecessary scene that makes no sense. Like, what, is she gonna cannibalize this guy? Is she gonna eat him? Why would she be sniffing his hand? She's not kissing his rings, which is itself a creepy ritual. He doesn't have any rings on his hands. It'd be cool if he did have a ring. That'd make the scene actually make sense. But they didn't have the balls to reference that. I'm sure a bunch of creepy cults that funded the movie would have been like, you can't have this chick actually kiss rings on a guy and make it creepy. We don't like that. I don't know anything about that. All I know is at least David's putting his helmet on. His IQ is 30 points higher than every other character. And he talks about being free. Again, in my rewrite, David would have been keeping things from the characters. He would have been more, subtle about his dialogue throughout the whole film. He wouldn't have been dropping random, obvious hints that are meant for the viewers, not the characters. It would have been quiet. Our main characters would be smart enough that they would figure out that maybe he's hiding something, and maybe they'd have to hack a computer to figure out what he's planning. But in this film, they're not. Because the writing is so bad, it doesn't allow for those types of things to happen. See, bad writing is always too simple. Its characters make dumb choices that only serve the progression of the narrative, and they don't seem like the actions of real people. That's when you take, movie takes risks and makes decisions to make it seem stupid, and then the viewers get taken out of the film. They feel like the movie's just serving its own designs, and there's nobody realistic that's actually involved with it. Characters don't have any realistic impulses or actions. They don't make decisions that make sense. You just feel like you're watching some kind of video game cutscene where the characters are making decisions you already could have predicted they would make. And again, fucking Idris Elba. There's all his scenes in this are just him sitting in a chair looking at screens. The fuck kind of function does he serve? He gives a very brief motivational speech to our religious archaeologist woman character, and he just looks at blue holograms. There's no tension in these scenes. It's not like the scenes from Aliens where they're actually following the characters through the ruin, through the maze, and trying to help him figure out what the fuck's happening. Instead, Idris Elba just makes dramatic comments while he's safe on the ship. I can't remember if he dies or not. Hope he does. Hope his character does. So we have this pointless scene where David gives us exposition about shit we've already seen. In my rewrite of this film, they'd be going back for a third mission, yes. But this dialogue wouldn't exist. In this scene, David would be revealing stuff to them kind of like he does in this scene, but it wouldn't play out the same. I don't think Wayland would have been following them directly on this mission. He wouldn't have put himself at physical risk after coming this far in search of immortality. If you've done that, why would you put yourself at risk randomly at the very end? Yes, I know the justification is Wayland's like, I want to meet my creators. But if David has already revealed to him, in my edit, that humanity's creation was a mistake, Wayland would want to stay on the ship. I suppose in my re-edit, the most logical person to replace Wayland on this mission would be Idris Elba. He would send this black captain guy in his place on a risky mission. It's kind of like that South Park episode where they make fun of the movie The Core, where there's always a black character that sacrifices himself. You could play into that trope and then subvert it where Idris Elba's the only survivor. Do whatever you want. My point is that Wayland would not be on this mission where David reveals to our characters how pointless their existence is. Because David doesn't care, he's a robot. Or maybe Wayland would have ordered him not to reveal it. Again, there's so many possibilities. This narrative is so disjointed and illogical, it's difficult to even recommend what to do to fix it. It's much easier to recommend what to do to fix Alien 3. Then we got this terrible scene with like a translation. It reminds me of the scene from the Disney movie Atlantis, where the Milo character randomly intuits that the Atlanteans speak 50 different languages, including languages they couldn't possibly understand because they developed above ground for thousands of years after the civilization was even a thing. My point is that this scene makes no sense. There's no reason that this, being would be able to talk to anyone except maybe David, and even that's a stretch. In my edit of this movie, David probably just would have hacked this guy's cryotube and we never would have seen him wake up. Then they wouldn't have had this grisly, overindulgent scene where the engineer rips off David's head and then he starts attacking people. This creature would not be this stupid. He wouldn't just start violently throwing people against the fucking ship walls. It doesn't make any sense. In my re-edit of this movie, David would have just plugged himself into the engineer's brain. We've already established in the original movie that David can access people's memories when they're in cryosleep. Maybe he figures out a way to hack into the cryopod of the engineer who's still asleep. You know, the guy just woke up and did a bunch of stupid shit. In my re-edit, David would hack into his pod and he'd access the engineer's memories of how humanity was accidentally created. Then maybe he'd figured out how to pilot the ship. Maybe he'd figure out all sorts of shit. Maybe David could even be driven insane or possessed by the unconscious, digitally ensconced brain of the engineer who was asleep. That would have made for a much more interesting twist. Make David into the villain finally and leave the engineer to rot in his little piss pod. So I guess in my re-edit, David would have been the one to smash everyone against the walls of the alien room. Oh God, this scene is so fucking self-indulgent and stupid. It's just another overly detailed, overlong reference to the first movie. Yes, that's the same structure we saw in 1979. It doesn't make this scene mean anything more or be more significant. It's just an object in a shape that we've seen before. It doesn't mean anything just because you show it to us again with a bunch of blue lights over top. Jesus Christ. Anyways, my rewrite, David would be the one doing all this shit, but he'd be possessed by the engineer. You don't actually have to have a physical alien body. In my rewrite, we would have established that David is an AI or some kind of construct. You know, he can be physically different. He doesn't identify as Lawrence of Arabia. His sexuality is not a Lawrence of Arabian. Do we have to add that to the LGBTQ 324 plus barbecue thing now? Do we have to add Lawrence of Arabia to that? I hope not. My point is that David would be the one doing all this. And our characters would be conflicted. They'd be like, shit, David brought us this far. He did all this important work and research. But now he's turned against us. Be much better than, making David out to be a villain from the very first 15 minutes of the film. It's almost like it's more tense if we're not sure about him till the end. Of course, that's not what this movie did. Okay, so now in the actual film we're seeing we got the ship preparing to take off. And I gotta say something that's always bothered me. The design of this ship is like a uterus-shaped type thing. That's the same design that we saw in Alien 1979. But the thing about that ship is that it was supposed to have been stuck on that planet, LV-426, for who knows how many, hundreds or thousands of years. So the body of the ship could have been affected by the geology, could have been weathered, whatever. The thing about, interstellar travel is that the structure of your ship would probably matter. If you look at conceptions of ships that could bend space-time, they always gotta have the engine far away and the cockpit out front or whatever. My point is just that this ship's design, as cool and HR geegery as it is, doesn't really make sense aesthetically. The ship has weird, asymmetrical elements to it. I always interpreted that from the Alien 1979 film as just a byproduct of the ship being stuck on that planet and getting, a bunch of wind and rain and weathering on it. So maybe one part of it looked different because it got more wind on it or something. My point is that they preserved that design perfectly in this, and that's like a detriment to this movie. If I was doing this movie, the ship would be a perfect crescent shape with pointed ends, because it wouldn't have been exposed to the elements. I mean, for fuck's sake, we just saw the ship open and, its way out of like an underground hangar bay. That means the ship's been protected from the elements for this whole time. Why wouldn't the ship be totally pristine? Why wouldn't it be aesthetically consistent, where both prongs of the little U shape would look the same? Why does one prong look different? I mean, maybe it's a minor point, but I don't know. It's just another thing where the filmmakers were like, well, we gotta stick to the exact same design, because we're catering to the viewers of Aliens. The ship's gotta look exactly the same or people will freak out. Really? I mean, we're not that committed to the aesthetic. You could tell us the ship was preserved and it looks slightly different. You could even throw in a throwaway line that explains it if you're that concerned about it. My point is that trying to stick to the original design so perfectly is an impediment to the film's world, because it overlaps, the viewer's expectations with the lore of the movie too much. It makes it seem like the filmmakers just want to, appeal to the viewers at the expense of the story. And I'll tell you a secret. If you want to appeal to the viewers, make the story actually good and make it make sense, instead of just focusing on the visuals. Now, of course, we have Idris Elba and the crew sacrificing themselves to blow up the ship. We have no indication that Idris Elba was this committed to the goal, but you know what? We don't give a shit about his character in the first place. It's not like that scene where Worf goes ramming speed into the Borg cube. We have no prior experience with this character that's equivalent to the experience that Worf's character has for the viewers of that movie. And it's just pathetic. Idris Elba wanted two things. Number one, he wanted to look like a badass. Number two, he wanted to die a martyr. And he just ended up playing into the South Park trope of the black character who sacrifices himself. My God, how racist! And of course you have one of the stupidest scenes in the whole fucking movie, where his characters are running vertically. I mean, they're running exactly according to where the ship's collapsing. Of course they should have gone, maybe left or right, instead of trying to keep going in the center direction that they're going. I mean, for fuck's sake, both these characters deserve to be crushed. Unfortunately, they're not. And finally, she has the instinct to roll. Good for you. The last remnants of your IQ finally took control. Oh, bad luck, Karen. The Starbucks barista got your order wrong and refused to correct it. You're gonna have to drink that latte with real milk instead of soy. And that will kill you. Oh shit, now the ship's gonna fall on you. Oh, there it goes. Oh no! Oops, she got saved by Deus Ex Machina. I couldn't have predicted that. I also have 2 minutes of oxygen remaining and I'm spending it doing the end of this review. You guys better be fucking grateful. So inexplicably our main character survived. Let's jump back to my whole edit of this film. Figure out what I would have done differently. So if you'll recall, David was the one who got hypnotized by the brain of the engineer when he hacked into his pod in my rewrite. So let's say things play out roughly the same way. David goes rogue, whoever's left on the ship piloting it sacrifices himself to crash it like we see here. That's fine. It's the climax of the film. Let's have a big explosion at the end. But in my rewrite, this main character, I guess she survives. That's fine. Let's say everybody else is dead, which is basically what's going on here. But, this final scene with this final alien, I don't know about that. So she goes back onto the ship, grabs a bunch of supplies. I mean, in the original movie, if I recall, she hijacks the uterus ship and tries to go to the engineer planet. Maybe in my rewrite, she'd, find David's head, which I think is what happens in this. But first she has to kill her illegitimate child that got birthed through black cum. Jesus, is this movie against race mixing? Cancel Prometheus. Hashtag. Anyways, now we got this scene that's supposed to be reminiscent of the first Alien movie. But it's too little too late. This character has gone through so many stupid situations and has been associated with so many morons that any action she takes at this point has no meaning. She shouldn't have even made it this far. Why didn't she just kill the alien back when it came out of her? Why did they leave it in this area, this abortion room? You know, maybe a good idea would have been to just burn it. In my rewrite, that's what they would have done. Actually, that makes sense. Let's talk about my rewrite a little more when it comes to this scene. So let's say the movie actually plays out kind of the way it does. She comes into the ruined part of the craft with the abortion zone. But this alien wouldn't be the one that came out of her, because in my rewrite that never happened. Instead, it would be the alien David was experimenting on, which would make her communicating with David actually mean something. And this engineer guy wouldn't exist. This fight would just be with the alien. Because again, the engineer's presence really doesn't matter. He just exists as a prop to be gored by the fucking monster and also to kill David. Again, in my rewrite, David would have been possessed by this guy's AI. Maybe he resists the possession, or, the human ship crashing into the uterus ship kind of snaps David out of his possession. In any case, these fight scenes we're seeing now would take place between our female archaeologist character and this alien, which wouldn't have come out of her vagina. It would have come out of David's petri dish instead. It still makes the scene just as tense. And she could still be communicating with David through her headset or whatever. And David could be saying, "Oops, sorry about my little experiment." He could almost be sort of talking to her in a way that we would interpret as taunting. Kind of like how Ash talked to Ripley in the first Alien, where he talks about how he admires the aliens, that type of thing. David could be unintentionally being creepy. Our main character could make some, quippy kind of responses to him. Instead, we got this overly convoluted scene where we get the birth of the alien from Aliens. It has to be an alien that went through a guy's eye, and then through a woman's uterus, and then through an engineer to get to the shape of the alien. Again, that mural we saw earlier makes no fucking sense. How could anybody who created anything related to the alien, even the people who engineered the black goo, have possibly predicted how the alien would look after all these different transformations? If they could predict that much, maybe they could predict that, they polluted Earth and human beings would come and, seek out their origins. If they're that prescient, they might as well be fucking oracles. It's almost like they wrote the film. That's what makes the original movie suck ass. Anyway, at this point, this conversation would probably play out kind of similar to how we're seeing it. Our main character would be talking to David and say, "Hey, I killed your petri dish experiment." And they would say, "Hey, look, I'm still stuck on the ship." In my edit, he wouldn't be a disembodied head. Maybe he'd be downloaded to the computer of the uterus ship and his body would be intact but inert next to the coffin of the engineer who woke up in the original. And then David would reveal that to her. That's kind of a cool reveal that there's multiple ships. It makes sense. They're on a planet that's, it's a homeworld of these engineers, or it's a base. So there'd be multiple ships. Oh God, she's gonna ride the Patrick Stewart dune buggy again? Do we have to endure this? Jesus Christ. Just bring some Remans with machine guns into this. It'd fit right in. The ending to this movie is so anticlimactic and pointless. It's just a reference to how Bishop was broken up in the previous films. But that had a totally different meaning. In this movie's context, this guy got randomly cut apart by an alien, and he was working against our characters for the entire film. And this chick saves him despite the fact that she's not aware he was basically experimenting on her and her crew the whole time. But don't worry, guys, she's got her cross necklace back, so she can believe in Satan and Lucifer again. I mean Christ. Christ, not Lucifer. They're definitely not the same thing. Anyways, there's some good special effects with David's head, I guess. I guess I can compliment that. I haven't complimented the original movie in a while, mostly because it's a piece of shit. So my rewrite of this should save David, and basically the movie would end the same. The very, very end of this movie isn't so terrible, where she's like, I want to go to the homeworld and figure out what the fuck's going on. And maybe, even in my rewrite, David wouldn't tell her that humanity was created by mistake. Maybe that's what makes him even creepier, is he just wants to experiment on her, but only at the end of the film. He wants to see how she'll react to not knowing what's going on. She's emotional, she's religious. He's testing how weak she is to, the illogical side of her brain. Because he's a totally logical machine. He's been trying to understand humanity this whole time. So it makes sense if we'd see him, trying to understand why she's being so fucking stupid. David's kind of like us, the viewers. If you have half a brain, you look at this writing and these characters and the situations and you go, how the fuck could anyone write this? It makes no sense. But hopefully you're not a psychopath like David. Oh, guys, we're almost at the end. I can't wait for this to be over. Final report of the vessel Plinkett. We finished the review. Patrick Stewart got back to base on his dune buggy, and he outpaced the Remans. Then we had some beers back at the base, and we discussed how much time we all wasted watching this film. Oh, it's 2094, guys. Only 70 more years till this takes place. I can't wait. The last survivor of the Uterus ship. Oh, and they're flying towards Saturn. That's great. Very epic, guys. We got to the end. Oh, but there's a post-credits Marvel scene where they're gonna be eating shawarma. Hey, where's the shawarma? I'm hungry. I want to see that shit. Oh no. What's happening? It's an alien birthing scene. Except it's not really an alien because it's got a cone head and a placenta attached. Again, the scene is so fucking pointless. It's like they were trying to set up shit they hadn't planned yet. Almost like they didn't plan this franchise at all. Let me give you a pro tip. Not everyone is a genius improviser. If you're writing a film or even a series of films, don't rely on improvisation. It's not the time or place to do it. It's the wrong medium. Jesus Christ, what a cringy scene. Oh, it doesn't quite have a second mouth. How tragic. Anyway, guys, I don't have anything else to say about this movie. I don't think I'll be commentating on the other films in the franchise. I don't know, maybe I'll do a review of Alien Covenant. It all depends on how many views this upload gets. If it doesn't get that many, I won't be back for a while. If it gets a whole bunch of views, then who knows? It's up to you to decide. Either way, thanks for watching and listening. Hope you enjoyed this commentary. I'm gonna head back to hell. My roommate Joseph Stalin is gonna be pissed because I haven't vacuumed the floors. Yeah, he gets really mad about cleanliness. He's kind of a stickler when it comes to that. In any case, guys, hope you're doing well up there on shitball purgatory Earth. And don't watch this movie. At least not without my commentary. Alright, guys. That having been said, peace out.